Okay, so we are live and starting to get up and running. Hello, everyone. Hello. Sorry, I'm running a little bit late here. I'm about 5 minutes late compared to normal. But I was having a great conversation earlier and trying to eat the last of my dinner. So, also, excuse me. I have to say, I'm still hungry. Okay. I'll eat the rest of this later. We have had a lot going on in the group. And I was very fortunate to get to talk to Capri. Let me see him. Trying to bring up the group here. All right. So I was able to get to talk to Capri, which was really nice. So Capri is the one in the group who had been forwarded by accident. Well, her husband was carbon copied on an email where one of the staff was talking about, like, can I say not it about replying to the parent's email? And it was because essentially they really just don't have the information and the data available to go ahead and to meet with her, right, for this IEP meeting. Hi, John. John is my husband, by the way, in case y'all don't know. So he's out, and so he's joining me. Hi, Stephanie. All right. Anyways, so I was able to talk to Capri because I know that thread exploded. It now has like 261 comments in that thread. So I did want to bring up a few things that I noticed going on in the thread. First, please make sure you read the group rules, okay? I only have like 10 group rules. I say that, like there's 10 group rules, okay? And I think mostly they're pretty self-obvious. One of the group rules is don't post to any major sites. And the reason I say that is like blanket posts. So Rights Law would be a good example. So don't post to rightslaw.com because it really does nobody any good. If you're new to special education, like, you won't know what the heck to look at. The site is massive. It is an amazing resource, though, so don't get me wrong. But if you're going to post to help somebody, like, give them a specific link. Tell them, like, send them directly to whatever it is that they're needing as far as information. Same with understood.org. I don't know if you've had a chance to ever look at understood.org site. I'm a little envious because, like, that's the way I would love my AESA site to be. And maybe one day it will, but understood.org also is a great site and tons of information. But when you are new to special education, it's just overwhelming. So I got a lot going on here at my house. Anyways, so please try to make sure that you post specific links to specific information if you post in the group. Also, please know, watch your language. We run a very G-rated group, and I appreciate that because I have to sit and read everything. And so I want to make sure that everything that I'm reading, if my children see it, that there's no problem, and I have no problem with them reading anything that they see on our site. So just be aware that I have those kind of requirements, plus there's like 8 other rules. So just please take time to go read the group rules. I would greatly appreciate it. So Capri's situation was very interesting. I got carbon copied on something that really shouldn't have gone to the parent. It is not terribly uncommon for these kind of emails to surface, believe it or not. This is far from the first one that has shown up in the group. There was somebody else a little while back who had to do a FERPA request and also got some emails that they were really surprised at how school officials were referring to them. But I hate to say, again, not uncommon. We've encountered this several times in the group, and each time people are really surprised. But teachers, well, they're human and they get frustrated. And sometimes they let that leak in their email, and it's incredibly unprofessional. Many teachers do not realize that those emails are part of public records. And so this is kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight, right? In the email, well, in that thread that Capri had, there were a lot of things going on. So one is there were quite a few people who were talking about, well, you should react and you need to go to the superintendent and the school board and you need to get an advocate and hire a lawyer. And there was a lot of what I consider overreacting. So I understand why people feel that way. I really do. And I understand why the advice was given that was given. But at this point, for what she received, really, it was something that she could easily handle herself. And you could easily handle it not only by doing a FERPA request, which is something when I got the chance to talk to Capri that we discussed, how she can access that information through a FERPA request. But if you couldn't access it, say it was older information, say like information from a year ago, for instance, then you could do a FOIA request instead. So a FOIA is a Freedom of Information Act request. And I personally think it's really great to kind of do both at the same time. So I would do the FOIA request. And the reason I would do it is because I know under FOIA, when a FOIA request has been given to a public agency, those records are then, I guess, become like protected records, right? Like nothing can happen to these records. They can't be deleted. They have to be permanently saved, essentially, right? And then and then here's the problem with the FERPA request. So if you were just an individual of the public and you were doing, not a FERPA, a FOIA. If you're an individual of the public and you were doing a FOIA request, they will charge you for the information. And it can be quite costly, especially if your FOIA request isn't very specific. And I'm talking about, I've seen charges in like a couple of $1,000s. So it can be quite costly. Do know people like journalists often can get the information for free. Same with lawyers. So if you think you're going to retain a lawyer, I wouldn't necessarily go through the FOIA request route. I mean, I would still submit it just to make sure those records are protected and saved. But I wouldn't go and get the records from them quite yet. I would wait and let my attorney do it. Now, if you want to try to access the records through FERPA, right, first realize, and I had posted this in the link or in that thread that Capri had, which is educational records. Or maybe I posted it separately. I don't remember now. But anyways, educational records do include emails. And there is the letter to HUSC. So the letter to HUSC is guidance stating that emails are part of a FERPA record request. So you are absolutely entitled to emails. And there is a great template letter that I have. And so if you would like like a sample letter, I do have one that you can use. And then for FERPA, kind of the reason I would go the FERPA route, or I would try to go the FERPA route, is because FERPA, you're allowed to view records. Okay, so it doesn't mean a printed copy. You're allowed to view the records. So, and the school cannot charge you for looking up the information. Okay, so under FOIA they can, and under FERPA they cannot. So essentially what can happen is that the school then has to fish out the information. And they have to put it all together in the file, and then they have to give you an opportunity to go and view it. And they have to do this in 45 days or less from when you requested to access the records, okay, through the FERPA. And you can go and sit and you can access these records and look through everything. Anything that you see of interest, some schools will let you take your phone and then you can sit there and like click, 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 and take pictures of the information that you need. Now, Other schools will not let you do this. Instead, they're like, no, you may not do this. There's a risk of privacy, which I don't understand that because it's your child's records and nobody else is usually there. But anyways, they're like, it's a risk of privacy and we won't let you do that. You have to, you have to request a copy and then you have to pay for it. So yes, schools, if you want a paper copy, are allowed to charge a fee. Now, there's some little rules into this, right? So they can't charge you a fee to the point that the records then become inaccessible to you. So this was brought up by somebody else in the group recently. And offhand, I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was, but they were talking about the school said you could only get the records after you paid $80, and they were only going to let you have them electronically. So you were going to pay $80 and they were going to get like the CD, and then you could take that and then view everything. So that's illegal and it's a violation of FERPA. Okay, you have to be able to view the records first. You don't have to like take copies of everything. You can literally view the records and then go, well, I want this, 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 and this, and these are the things that I want because it's what's most relevant for you. Okay, so just be aware of these little things going on. And then also realize too, if for some reason, say you need these records because you have an upcoming IEP meeting, they're not allowed to keep the records from you. They are supposed to produce the records if you're needing them before an IEP meeting. Also, if you're needing this information, these school records, and you're running into issues, you can't afford to pay for them, the school should still produce them. Say if you qualify for a free or reduced lunch, then that essentially is saying that, you meet the federal guidelines. And so of like, I don't know what the guidelines are nowadays, actually, whatever it is, you meet the federal guidelines for free and reduced lunch. And so therefore it could be unreasonable for them to charge you these fees to get access to the records. And then also one last thing, if you have some kind of disability where you need the printed copies of the records, say maybe you speak another language as your primary language and you need somebody to help interpret the letters, that would be a legitimate reason that you need a physical copy so you can take it elsewhere to have somebody to sit down with you and help you with translating the records. So those are all reasons why you might be able to access records under FERPA for free, right? Where under FOIA, it's going to cost you money. So this is a reason why I was saying I would try to access them through FERPA first, and then I would go ahead and send the FOIA request, because the FOIA request, I know, kind of seals those records, that information you're seeking, so nothing can be done with that information. But I would try to get them through that FERPA mechanism. So I hope that helps answer the question of why I was saying how to go about accessing the information and why that route specifically. So I don't know if anybody has any questions concerning FERPA, but I do know that was something that was requested that I discuss because it was so heavily discussed here just recently, kind of with some of these new revelations that were going on in the group. Let me see what else was there. So I didn't know if anybody had any questions this evening. I see that I have 7 people who have joined us, but I don't see everybody's name, so I'm not sure who all is here. But if you have any questions, please let me know so I can answer those directly, because the idea for doing these is to be able to allow you to ask questions and kind of get an answer immediately instead of waiting in the group. I try to be fairly responsive in the group, but sometimes it is hard, and I know I've missed a few things lately because I've been busy trying to get together the conference. So that's what I've been working on recently. And then let me see here. And I know that I had a request just recently of some information to discuss. Let's see. hopefully here I'll remember what that was and hit that topic, or they'll be on tonight and they'll ask. Okay, and let me check here. All right. So we got on Facebook and we're on YouTube. And for those of you who happen to be on YouTube, do know that I run an IEP/504 assistance group on Facebook. You can join us there. I also do the live chat there. And it is kind of where you can interact with me best, I would say, to ask questions, because I know there are some issues with asking questions. So Ellie says, hi. Hi, Ellie. How are you? I hope you are having a good evening. Like I said, if you have any questions, please let me know. So Christina wrote recently, she's been having several issues go on, but she was saying that I am writing my request for an expedited due process. I've got several cases for denial of FAPE to my child and for myself, causing me not to have meaningful participation to ensure FAPE for my daughter, harmed by removal and denial to teaching that resulted in lower grades. Y'all need to be a little quieter, please. So let's see. It says some of those alone might be technical, but together it is showing a pattern of procedural violations leading to substantive ones. And it said, should I put all this in one request? So yes, you can put it all into one request as long as you can keep everything kind of together and in line, right? So you want to make sure, Christina, when you put everything together, that you make sure you like draw those lines, right? Like, here's what happened. Here's the law that was violated. Here's what happened. Here's the law that was violated. And make sure that you can really draw all those lines to where everything was violated, okay? And if you need help with the law aspect, please let me know and I will help you with that, okay? Let's see. So Kristen had posted an update, and she was saying that she was having problems with her son having some behavioral issues over the summer when he wasn't able to kind of like, you know, sort of stay in that pattern of school environment and waking up and somewhere to go. And so she was trying to get him into extended school year services, and the school was like, you know, no, I can't really do that. Well, it turns out, guess what? The school district did find something. So one of the staff members at her son's school found a business that will sponsor him for a county program, and that she had just registered him last night, and that she's working on getting the full details of the sponsorship. And I think that is wonderful that they were able to do that. It's amazing, right? What can happen when there's a bit of motivation behind the school and the school staff, right? Let's see. I know there's been a lot of confusion too about extended school year services. So I guess I'll take a moment to address that if no one has any questions. So extended school year services, there's been a lot of confusion. So do be aware that for, you know, like the federal regulations for extended school year services are very vague. And they're not really helpful at all, actually. So, matter of fact, I'm going to sit here and go look them up because we'll read them to you so you can just see like exactly how vague they are. So it is 34 CFR 300-106. All right. And I'm going to post that here so that way you guys have it. So what it says is that each public agency, all right, so that's their school, must ensure that an extended school year services are available as necessary to provide FAPE, okay? The next thing it says is extended school year services must be provided only if the child's IEP team determines on an individual basis that services are necessary for the provision of FAPE for the child. 3, it says, and implementing the requirements of this section, the school may not, and so this is like an important part here, They may not limit extended school year services to particular categories of disability. So that's important, right? Because what we're saying is you can't just say, well, only children who have autism and who are educationally listed as having autism, only they get extended school year services. Or a child who has an intellectual disability, only they are entitled to extended school year services. That is not true. They cannot limit it to any particular category of disability. It also says unilaterally limit the type, amount, or duration of services. Now, this again is really important because I've had several people tell me, well, the school district told me we do like summer school and we only offer it 2 days and it's only for like 2 weeks or a week or at the end of June or whatever. Like they're really kind of limiting what it is that they're providing. So all I can tell you is that's a huge red flag. So beware when you're told that, okay? Look at this law and go back and quote them this law and say, I have concerns. This is not consistent for FAPE for my child. My child's unique needs for their IEP, because that's what they're supposed to be doing. When you make an IEP, it's for your child's unique needs. It's not something that's pre-done, pre-packaged. It should be what is meet their unique needs to help them gain FAPE. So do be aware that kind of a big red flag when you see that happen, okay? So then it says definition. And it says, as used in this section, the term extended school year services means special education and related services that are, one, are provided to a child with a disability that is beyond the normal school year of the school, in accordance with the child's IEP, and at no cost to the parents of the child, and that it meets the standards of the state agency. Hi, Freddie. It's my kitty. Anyways, so be aware that you have these things, kind of going on too, right? So that's the federal law. So, of course, the federal law is written and it's kind of vague. It's one of the problems with federal law. It's written in a vague fashion so that states can then go in and kind of apply some of their interpretation, and then it can go on. And then, like you have case law that kind of helps really refine what exactly is going on. So that's what, so everybody can see. This is my kitty. Say hi, kitty. All right. So be aware, right, of these different things that are going on when it comes to extended school year services. And what are these red flags? And if you need help understanding what it is that is your state's requirements for extended school year services, please let me know. I've looked up quite a few of the states already and have helped people with what is their state's needs, what the eligibility essentially for extended school year services. And mostly parents are told about regression and recoupment. And so regression and recoupment is one factor that should be considered, but normally there are quite a few others. So it's really important that you look at what is your state's way in which they interpret the federal law, and then does your child meet these extended school year services in order to receive FAPE. Hi, Carol. Thank you for joining us. So I was just wrapping up talking about extended school year services and FAPE, very important topic that's been going on a lot. Also, please be aware, these discussions for extended school year services really should be taking place back in February and in March. And part of the reason is because these should occur early enough in the year so that if you're denied or something else goes on, right, that you can then file for due process and get a hearing on a due process hearing if you believe your child should be having extended school year services, but they were improperly denied. So I do try to remember, I try my darndest to remember to remind you guys that in January and February, I kind of start posting about now's the time to start scheduling your IEP meetings so that you can get your discussion in on extended school year services before it gets too late into the year. So somebody had just recently posted about Texas and trying to get extended school year services for their child in Texas. And they were saying that you couldn't get them for a kindergartner. So I just want to let you know that's not true, right? So we just read the law, and the law says that it's for the provision of FAPE. So if your child needs it in order to have FAPE, then therefore they should be, there should be, the IEP team should be considering whether your child needs extended school year services or not. I mean, there shouldn't be like a unilateral denial of the services just because they're kindergartners. It would be like having a unilateral denial just because your child has a specific learning disability versus autism or something, right? Like you can't just unilaterally make these decisions. Also, there was, is it too late in the year? Okay, so maybe so, might be too late to do whatever their preset program is. But again, it's not about the preset program, right? What it is it's about your child's unique needs. And that's not what they're not considering. They're not considering your child's unique needs. So if your child does need extended school year services, but it's too late to get them enrolled into whatever their summer school program is, that doesn't mean that they just get to go, oh, well, therefore your child doesn't get extended school year services. No, that's not how that works. So then the school needs to come up with something. Either they need to work something out and get your child enrolled into whatever their summer program is, if that program meets their need for FAPE. That's the important part. It's not a child care service. It's not respite. It's not to work on random things. These are to help your child gain FAPE. That is what extended school year services are for. So, and then, so my friend here, Flo, she was just saying she was successful in getting extended school year services in the middle of the summer one year. So yay, good job. Yeah, sometimes you can do that. It depends on if your school district is meeting. Flo is in New York. And so it is a little easier in New York, in the city that never sleeps. And all right, so that's New York City, but you get my drift. So like New York, it's a little busier than some states. You might have a little harder time when summer commences, essentially, right? Getting people to meet and then making these decisions, because it is supposed to be an IEP team decision. And sometimes those people are gone for the summer. I know my husband, as a public school teacher, is really looking forward to the start of summer because he's like, I just need a break. It's been busy in the busy school year, and he likes having that downtime. Okay. Let's see. So do I have any other questions this evening? So far we've covered FERPA requests. We've covered FOIA requests, why you might want to access records through FERPA versus FOIA. And then we've covered extended school year services, as these have all been really rather hot topics in the group, right? It's been a lot going on in the group lately. Let's see. There was recently, out of the Seattle Times, a news story that I posted to the group when it was talking about how lawmakers in Washington State want all paraeducators in Washington schools to complete formal training. And so this article was talking about, will they pay for it? And it was really rather interesting article. So if you didn't get a chance to read it, I encourage you to do so. But I thought it was fascinating because it's one of the things I hear is complaints from many paraprofessionals, and really kind of parents and teachers too, teachers who work with paraprofessionals, which is it's really difficult to find good quality paraprofessionals. Now, part of that has to do with the fact of I have cat fur on my face. So part of that has to do with the fact of it's really difficult to find quality help when they're paid next to nothing. I mean, most of these states, paraprofessionals make pretty much minimum wage or slightly above minimum wage. And if you find good quality help, good quality paraprofessionals, normally they will not stay there at the job long term for the pay. So it's very hard to retain people. It's very hard to retain quality people as paraprofessionals. Um, and then I think kind of compounding the problem is this lack of training. And often teachers are required to undergo professional development, but paraprofessionals are not. And I think that's a real shame because paraprofessionals really should be part of professional development also for any kind of things concerning special education. And I know I have quite a few paraprofessionals in my group, and I've even had a couple of them tell me that they have learned more about the law out of my group, it's like special education law out of my group than they have at their own school. And I think that's an incredible shame. So, and then Flora's just saying, she goes, most schools hire warm bodies. And I agree with that. And part of that is just because there's such a need, so you got like this huge need, and then you have very few, if any, people who are applying and sort of filling that need. So it really is rather interesting, kind of that disparity, right? So, like I said, I do agree with you. I know that there's a special education teacher who comes in and works with my children, and that's been part of her problem. She's lost one of her paraprofessionals and then had a really difficult time replacing that person just because it was, already into the school year. The pay is so poor. They're working in particular where she's at with students who have behavioral issues. So these children, kick, bite, hit, punch, and they are middle school aged children. So they are larger. And, a lot of people they don't want to get paid minimum wage and risk getting punched in the face. So it is kind of hard to find somebody to fill that position when you have a position like that open. All righty. So as I said, we talked about Capri and her CC'd letter. That was sort of the big hot topic this week. I think, so that thread had 261 comments. But it was fascinating. And I was glad that I was able to talk to Capri. Actually, it was right before I came on here. It was part of the reason I didn't get to finish my dinner, but that was okay, Capri, because it was a very worthwhile conversation. And I think now that we had a chance to talk and then go over the law, and I was able to sort of prep her so that she's prepared for her meeting this Friday. So I think she'll be just a lot more confident in what's going on. Let's see. So Julie has been struggling to find an attorney to help her in filing due process. And her son, who has an IQ, she said, of 71, and that she believes he has learning disabilities in math and reading, and that he really hasn't had any significant improvement in his ability to do math or reading in the last 4 years. And we kind of discussed about how this violates Andrew. So the Supreme Court case of Andrew is a really important kind of landmark case that happened, I believe it was 2 years ago at this point. And it's important to know because part of what it says is that you should be making goals for your child that are appropriately ambitious in light of your child's circumstances. And I really don't think that's happened in Julie's case. And I'm hoping that I can convince Julie to file due process herself because I know that she feels very overwhelmed by this. But I think it's really important that she pursues this because her child does need the additional help. And I'm afraid at this point, the only way that that's really going to happen is to go ahead and file for due process. And I do want to tell you, you shouldn't be deterred by that process. Just because the school, will have their school attorney handle it, doesn't mean a parent can't handle a due process complaint or even a state complaint. So I recently posted another story, I believe in the group, at least I thought I did, talking about a parent out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, who had filed a state complaint. And it's important to make sure that you do take the time to file these state complaints and due process complaints, because that is what makes your schools change. If you want to look for a more systemic change and to help people, that's a great way to go about it, is to file for these state complaints and due process complaints, because then the schools and agencies not only have to address these things, but then put into place new procedures and policies to help make sure that nobody else falls through the crack in that kind of manner. So Ellie had a question, and she said, can a 15-to-1 special class not be offered in math? My son is in 3rd grade and is not being offered math in 15-to-1 next year, only ELA. 15-to-1 is listed in our district's SPED continuum. So no, and I don't understand why it wouldn't be offered also in a 15-to-1. And even if it wasn't, if your child has issues with math, dyscalculia, then your child should then still be given like resource help or something like that when it comes to math. So I don't understand. And like I was saying earlier, so it doesn't really matter like what is your child's disability that's listed on their IEP. You know, it could be autism, it could be intellectual disability, it could be anything. But if your child needs help in a specific area, then the school should be giving your child help in that area. And if they're not, then it could potentially constitute a denial of faith, right? Because it doesn't matter what the eligibility category is for special education. What matters is your child receiving the services for them to get a free, appropriate public education. That's what matters. So if he needs that smaller class, and then he needs that smaller class, and it needs to be worked out. And I don't know, I mean, kind of like your two options is to go ahead and let him enter into the larger class and see how things go, right? So at the end of that first grading period, see how he does, get a progress report and that sort of thing, and find out, is he doing okay, or is he not making progress, or is he making minimal progress? So this goes back to the Andrew that I was just mentioning a minute ago. So if he's making minimal progress, that's not enough, because it's not enough to help him sustain where he is and not fall further behind. So, and then I think you really have like really good leverage at that point, because now you've got data and you can say, hey, we tried it your way. We tried in the bigger class. We now have data, and the data shows my child is not thriving in this environment. Not only not thriving, they're just doing poorly because he's not making appropriate gains in his education. And so therefore he is potentially being denied FAPE. And then, you know, tell the school, so what are we going to do about this? And they should be offering more help and services at that point, along with potentially helping him at, you know, like have services in a resource room. Let's see. So Flo is just saying, so you're so lucky to even have a 15-to-1. Our district got rid of that. So if they got rid of that, what do they put in its place? There should be something, right? You're supposed to have this continuum of special education services as it's stated in the law. And I don't know if many of you are aware of that, but there is law for that. And matter of fact, I'm going to go look that up here. So the law is called the Continuum of Alternative Placements, and it's 34 CFR 300-115. Okay, and so that's, just so you know, that's what the law is. All right. And also why I have this moment, right? So let me tell you this part. I am not a lawyer. So I am just a legal scholar, and I have a good memory. So I like to read the law, try to interpret law, understand the law, help you understand the law, but I am not a lawyer, so I cannot practice the law. So I just want to make that clear. Anyways, let's see. So Julie was saying, what's the difference between a state complaint and due process? Excellent question. So in that article that I was talking about earlier about the woman who was in Tulsa who filed for state complaint, what was I found interesting in that article was Perry Zirkle. So Perry Zirkle is a special education attorney. I don't remember where he was out at. But anyways, he writes a lot of letters to OSEP. And so there are quite a few guidance letters. It says like the letter to Zirkle and it lists date. So good for him for bringing all these topics up, right? Because the last few they have recently addressed that he has brought up are all concerning a specific learning disabilities. Anyways, he said that there was some research that looked at like 5 states and then determined, and these 5 states, how often did parents win when they went to due process versus how often did they win when they went to do a state complaint. And what I found so fascinating was you were more likely to win a state complaint as a parent than you are due process. So I was kind of thinking like, why is that? So what I'm thinking is because these parents, as you guys, right, as you're sitting here and you're trying to file these due process or trying to do these without the assistance of an attorney. And because let's be honest, right, attorneys are expensive. And that was part of one of the things that Julie mentioned, that she needed a $2,500 retainer just to try to retain an attorney to help her. And she's like, this is tough. I don't have that kind of money. I don't have that kind of money. And so if that's the case, then you have to go it on your own. And if you have to go it on your own, then you need to be conversant in the law enough so that you can sit there like I was talking about earlier, right? Like, here's the violation, here's the law. Here's the violation, here's the law. Like, you need to pretty much write your due process complaint like that. And most parents, I don't think, are probably capable of doing that, especially if you aren't super conversant with the law in the first place. And that's part of the reason why I like this group, because it allows me to assist you guys in learning the law. So if you wanted to go, so a state complaint is handled by the state. Due process is handled by the federal government. Okay, so it's U.S. Department of Education. And the big difference is state complaint, they go and investigate themselves. Due process, it is truly a hearing with an administrative law judge presiding. And so if you do go and file due process yourself, do be aware, you will have this administrative judge who oversees your case. Now, don't let that in and of itself like stop you from filing due process if you think that's what you need to do. It's okay, because they realize you are not an attorney, just like I'm not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer, right? I might know law well, but I'm not a lawyer. So they'll realize you're not a lawyer either. So if you need help or need assistance, you can often go and just tell them like, hey, I need a continuance. I need more time to get my things together. You're given more leeway when, there's court proceedings, because it's not like the ins and outs of, legal proceedings and how things go, right? So you're given a lot of leeway, I guess, is really where I'm just going with that. That's why I wouldn't let it concern you too much if you can't have an actual lawyer with you. You just need to make sure that you reasonably know the law well. And thankfully, you're in this group, because if you're watching me, you're in my group, and that means that you have an opportunity to learn the law. And if you don't know the law, you can ask me, and I'm more than happy to try to help you with the law and help you figure out where violations have occurred and help you tie that to the law. So that's what I've been doing recently with Terry. Terry, she's the one who's in Mississippi, and her son recently faced a bullying incident. And it was like racially motivated bullying incident on top of that. And so she's been involving all sorts of people, including the NAACP and just like everyone and their brother. It's been amazing to see her go. And so she has an IEP meeting coming up, and she put together a list of parental concerns and sent it to me. And I helped her with that. I helped her with taking her parental concerns, turning it into something with a lot more bite to it, because I added in a whole lot of law. And so I can help you with doing that. And so a lot of these things that she was alleging, essentially I tied it into the law. So it can be done. And I hope, Julie, that answers your question between like state complaint and due process. And also realize that if you file a state complaint and then you file due process on the same complaint, most likely they will dismiss it from the due process because they're going to wait for the state complaint to kind of run its course. Okay, so just be aware. Let's see. Hi, Danielle. How are you? I know Danielle is also having problems with her school and, again, bullying issues. And I think what I'm going to do next is one of the topics that I'm going to write on for the blog post. Actually, I'm going to work on two of them. So one is for bullying, because that's been kind of a hot topic in the group lately. And then the other one is for extended school year. I think that would also be quite relevant too. And I'm going to see what all I can kind of information and stuff that I can pull together in order to write this blog post for you guys. Because I think if I can get everything together, it'll make an excellent blog post and help answer a lot of the questions that have been going on in the group. So Flo is saying excellent topics tonight. Thank you so much. And that is strictly due to you guys and the information that's kind of been needed in the group, right? That's all you. So Ellie was just saying, I wish I had joined this group sooner. Thank you. I appreciate that. Somebody else was just telling me actually it was Capri, when I talked to her. She was just saying how she was very thankful that she had joined this group and that she had been in a few others and then found my group to be more helpful. And I was explaining to her, part of the reason is I really strive in this group to make sure that I give you information that's specific for you, for your circumstance. That, I don't give you like go see rightslaw.com. No, I give you specific information for you that's relevant to your state. Even though we are Arizona Exceptional Students Association, I practice advocacy in all 50 states. I help people in all 50 states. And I find information that is in your state that's relevant to your situation and give you your state's law and guidance and whatever else information I can find, along with federal law that's applicable to that instance. So, I try to really customize and make sure you get the information that you specifically need and not just something vague in general. Because I know when you are a parent and you are lost and overwhelmed in that special education system, it's like, I don't have time to look. You're just, oh my gosh, you're so overwhelmed. I know. I've been there. And done that in ×3 with my surviving quads, right? And so it's really tough. And I know that's what I would have wanted, is somebody to kind of hold my hand and to kind of walk me through the information that I need to know. So I do the very best I can to kind of help walk you through the information that you need to know. And for those of you who have meetings or et cetera, I try to help, prep you for the meeting, to give you the law, to help you with your parental concerns, and to essentially just kind of, get you geared up and ready to go and attend that meeting and really kick rear, right? Okay. So Renee was saying, what types of apps and technology can the school district be expected to supply to students, particularly over the summer, but during the entire year to support ELA, math, and reading? It's a great question, and there are tons of things. But here's the thing you want to consider. So please make sure that you take the time. Children, please be quiet. See, like real life, right? So please take the time to go and read my blog post. So my special education terms to know part 1 in particular is free right now. And so I highly encourage you to take time to go read it. And in it, I address AT. So AT is assistive technology. And there's in that post, there's a whole bunch of counter arguments essentially for why your child might be denied assistive technology. And then, like I do with all my blog posts, I have hyperlinks in my blog post. Please make sure you take the time to go click on all the hyperlinks. All right. It's very important because you don't want to be referencing me. You want to reference whatever it was that I referenced when I wrote that post. Also, I have a post on 25 plus apps for Android devices, and I need to go in and fix that. So it's not complete, but I'm working on it. still trying to get a good grip on doing WordPress. WordPress is new to me, and I've been struggling. Anyways, so I need to go and finish that post, like transferring it over. I had it elsewhere, and then I'm trying to transfer it over. And it turns out it's a lot more complicated in WordPress to transfer it over. But so that was one that I have. And then I also have executive functioning and assistive technology. And so in that post, I cover quite a bit about different assistive technology you can use if your child has issues with executive functioning. Now, for math, in my blog post I have on dyscalculia, I cover in that post assistive technology and different apps and things that you can use for it. And then for reading, I haven't really covered reading because I feel like everybody else and their brother has covered reading. And so I haven't bothered covering it, but I probably should, shouldn't I? And then help you with some assistive technology on that end. But there are several things that you can use for reading, and I'm sure there are people in the group who can tell you too. But like one of the things that you can get from the school is to make sure that you have access to audio books and audio information. That can come from Bookshare, which is often what they like to refer you to. But I will tell you that it's a very robotic voice. It's kind of hard to listen to. So unless your child, doesn't mind listening to a robotic voice reading your information, then instead you might want to look into Learning Ally. So Learning Ally is another large repository of books, and these books are like audio books read by actual people. So the flow of the reading is a lot better. And Audible, of course, is another thing, another way that you can get audiobooks. Do realize, though, the school should be supplying this information for you. So they should be supplying you with the audiobooks. And that should be one of the accommodations in your child's IEP. Also, that includes textbooks, right? So if your child is older and they're using textbooks, the school needs to figure out how to get an audio copy of the things that they are working on. And often that's forgotten, and I'm not really sure why, but it's something to look out for. So do keep an eye on that. And for ELA, so it depends on what the issue is for ELA, because there's a lot of reasons somebody may have dysgraphia, okay? Now, I do have a blog post on dysgraphia, and in there I do cover assistive technology for dysgraphia. But it also, say if your child has problems with fine motor skills to actually like write the letters, to write the letter, M and D and that kind of thing, then there are certain assistive technology you may want to use. If your child has okay handwriting, their fine motor skills are okay, they may not need as much assistive technology per se, but maybe need like graphic organizers. So I do have a huge link list in the group. If you look under hashtag graphic organizers, it is an enormous list, because I didn't even realize like you can have graphic organizers for math and for history and some other subjects. And I mean, I knew about English, right? But I didn't know there was like other subjects you could use graphic organizers for. But you absolutely can. And I have, I don't know, probably a good 20 links in there. So do check that out.
Alexa?
All children, please go get ready for bed and brush your teeth now. It's Alexa helping me boss my children around. Alrighty. So anyways, Renee, if I didn't answer your question, please let me know, and then you can comment in the group, and I will give you some more links and information specifically to help answer whatever I kind of missed. So just let me know, okay? Let's see. So Capri was saying AT apps, especially for Chromebook, to help with organization and executive functioning skills. So Capri, like I said, I do have a blog post on executive functioning and assistive technology. I mean, like literally, that's what it's called. So look there. And then I'm not sure if I specifically looked at Chromebook, but that does bring up a good point. And then maybe something that I should look into as a future blog post to address specifically. And I can, kind of get that done and written up over the summer. So Julie was saying, can I do a state complaint? And then if that doesn't work, then try due process. That's a good question. I think you can. I was going to say that comes up so infrequently, like I don't know off the top of my head. Anyways, though, I think you can. But the state complaint should resolve the issue, hopefully, right? Like if it's a well-written state complaint, that should kind of cover everything and resolve your issue. So Renee was saying, you're truly a blessing. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Sometimes I feel like I do stuff and, I'm underappreciated. I was telling Capri when I called her earlier, I'm like, I was a little sad, people. Sad. Because nobody commented and tagged me in the post that Capri had. And everybody was talking about, getting an advocate and getting a lawyer. Well, guess what? This group is to teach you, right, how to advocate so that you don't need a lawyer. Because, I mean, seriously, most people don't have that kind of money sitting around. And then even for an advocate, most advocates charge a lot of money. I mean, they charge usually a minimum of $100 an hour. And a lot of people don't even have that kind of money sitting around. So I'm really, I'm here to try to help educate you so that you don't need anyone. And you don't need me. You don't need another advocate. You don't need a lawyer. Because it's not good to rely on others. We had one of the people post just recently saying that they did have an advocate, but a family emergency came up. So now they're having to go and attend the meeting alone. And that's part of the reason why I think it's so important that the parents know this information yourself. You're not relying on that advocate to do it for you. You're not coming to the advocate and going, here's my problem, I don't understand what to do. And then tossing it over to the advocate and going, and the advocate taking that problem and going, I'll fix it, and then put it in that black box and shake it, and then, oh, look, it's all done. Everything's fixed. That's great, but you missed the whole part that was in that black box. And that was the important part, because that is what helps you, right? So if you ever run into this problem again, you would know how to address the problem yourself and not need an advocate. So it's really important, I think, that, you try to learn this information yourself. And I'm here to help you with that and facilitate that. So Capri was just saying, I love this group. Well, thank you so very much. We were talking about that earlier, and I do appreciate that a lot. And so Christina was saying, this is the best groups, hands down. Thank you, seriously, because I do try really hard. And I was telling Capri, I probably spend about 50 hours a week in the group, like reading stuff and researching and doing things, answering questions, giving law, etc. And this is all the reason why I'm trying to encourage you guys to go buy a bronze membership. It's $25 a year. And so what I'm asking you to do is essentially pay me $25 a year to assist you and give you information, to give you law, and to help you and to guide you so that you can learn to be the best advocate that you can be for your child. And you don't need to rely on others. So Chris was just saying, hi, Michelle. Hi, Chris. So Christina was saying, any app to record on the iPhone. Christina, I do not own an iPhone, and that is because I'm just too poor to be owning an iPhone. So I'm not sure, but knowing iPhones and Apples, they have such great technology. There has to be something, and I would imagine somebody in the group will be able to answer your question, in this case, way better than I can do. Though if you need, I can research it and find it for you in like 2 hot seconds. Do be aware if you ever have any information that you are needing, okay, to please let me know, because especially if you're struggling looking for a specific piece of information, please let me know. Because I've had people tell me, like, I've looked for weeks for information that I literally found in under 3 minutes. And that's just because I have a lot of knowledge. I have a lot of experience. I know what keywords that you may not know to go and do an internet search to help turn up the information that you're looking for. So instead of wearing yourself out looking for the information, just let me know. And if I can find it, I'll give you the link. I mean, it's very rare for me not to find something. Matter of fact, I think it's been 3 years since the last time I was asked to go find something and I couldn't find the information somebody was requesting. So Renee was just saying that she'll go check it out. So she'll go check out my blog post. So please make sure if you do have a bronze membership, take the time to go through the blog. I spent a lot of time writing those blog posts. I am not a writer. It may seem like it, but I'm really not. I struggle with writing. I have dysgraphia. I'm a terrible writer. I've just learned to overcome a lot of that, and I am a technical writer. Maybe a bit of a boring writer. But when I go to write something, I'm going to write like everything that I can think of that is relevant to that subject, that if I was looking it up, I would want to know. So most of my blog posts are chock full of hyperlinks. And that is the reference material I looked at as I went to go write the article. So please make sure you take time to review that information because some of it's really interesting. And there are times that like I didn't put something that I read that was interesting into my post because it just didn't kind of fit what I was doing. But I still hyperlinked to it just because I was like, hey, this is really some cool stuff. So please make sure you take the time to like click and look at all the information in the links. So, and then Renee was saying, I look forward to reading all of it. So I hope so. And then also too, do know that if you have any questions about my posts, please let me know. I keep telling that to people. And so nobody ever comes back to me and lets me know anything. So I'm hoping these make sense because there is a point, you know, right? Like you learn so much information. You go to write something and your point of view is not that of a beginner anymore, right? It's now kind of that expert. And so what happens is you go to write that post and then to somebody who's a beginner, you're like, they're sitting there going, well, what the heck are they talking about? So I want to make sure that whenever you go to read my posts, no matter how complicated the subject, because I do cover some of the neuropsych domains, like processing speed, like that's one of the posts right now that is available with free membership that you can access. And the processing speed post, you know, it took me a while to write. It's full of hyperlinks to peer-reviewed journal articles, many of them medical journal articles. I tried to write the blog post in as plain English as I could so that it's understandable, but didn't lose the important information in it. And I have yet to have anybody tell me anything about the post and if it's understandable to them. So I would love to know. So I would love feedback. If anybody ever wants to give me any feedback, I'm totally open to feedback. And if I need to change things, then I want to do that. So Renee was saying, you are creating such a huge movement. Thank you for empowering us. Well, I'm glad. And that's what I want to do, you know, because I have Arizona Exceptional Student Association now, right? But the summer, we're going to change it to American Exceptional Student Association. And part of it is I want to be able to help people like Julie who really need to retain an attorney and go to due process. And that's another reason why I ask all of you to buy a membership, because 30% of the revenue generated through memberships we're using to fund the Reed Scholarship. And the Reed Scholarship is a scholarship of $3,000 that is given to a family for them to use to retain an attorney to take their case to due process. Because I really think it's very important that we take more cases to due process, not less. And that's what parent information training centers do. They don't want your case to go to due process. So they will try their darndest with mediation and state complaints. And that's because the funding mechanism for those parent information training centers depends on them not taking stuff to due process. And so, and if I remember correctly, it was Julie who told me that, you know, they got so much help and then they sort of dropped her case. And that's because it needs to go to due process. And they're like, we can't help you. Well, it's not that they couldn't help you. They probably could help you. They don't want to help you. And it's because they could lose their funding. So it's understandable. I mean, I wouldn't begrudge them of that. And that was why when somebody asked me about like, do I want my organization to become a parent information training center? And I'm like, actually, no, I don't. And that's because I want the ability to be able to retain advocates and other people and to have my READ scholarship and to take the school districts to due process. So that means I need to be funded by individuals. I can't be funded by the federal government. And that's what I'm going to strive to do. So Courtney was saying, hello from Virginia. I'm sorry for tuning in late. Well, it's okay because we run for quite a long time. So that way everybody can tune in. Because literally I have people from, New York, Virginia, on the Eastern Seaboard, all the way across the country, onto the Western Seaboard in California. I'm in Arizona. And we have everybody kind of in between Montana, Missouri, Michigan, Mississippi. I mean, pretty much you name a state. And I have helped people in that particular state, including U.S. territories and even some people in Canada and a few in England who were in my group from when I first started the group. So lots of fun there. So Courtney was also saying, I was just wondering if you had covered FOIA and FERPA. I have, and it was at the beginning of the video. So please make sure you watch the video from the beginning because I did cover it, I think, pretty thoroughly. And do know if you have any other questions, please let me know. And I'm happy to answer those questions too. So Renee was saying, I had no idea there was a membership. I will do that. So, okay, I'm not trying to guilt you people in anything, all right? So I've been running this group for a long time, completely for free. But I have big plans, and I'm hoping to get that READ scholarship up and running. And that was one of the things, the membership, that will help enable me to do that. And then kind of, for the 50 hours a week, maybe, hopefully, I can get some money in compensation for the time that I put into the group. But make no mistake, I do this because I like doing it. And I do this because I want to help you guys. Because, like I said, I understand those feelings of being kind of lost and overwhelmed, not understanding what's going on. That happened to me, and that's what I was telling Capri earlier. I just found out kind of early on with my children because they were, had so many needs being micro preemies. I found out through early intervention when we really had a hard time with early intervention. I'll just say that. And it was so significant that I did turn to the Disability Law Center, and I was in Nevada at that time. And I went to the Disability Law Center, and they happened to be working on pursuing cases similar to mine that involved early intervention. And that was why they took my case. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten free help, right? So they took my case and we won. They were in violation, new procedures and policies and stuff were put into place. I got compensatory services for my children because they had aged out of early intervention. But due to the denial of services, we were given this compensatory services. And all that's fine and dandy, right? But it was in that instance that I was like, I know nothing. I had no idea what was going on. I knew nothing. I didn't understand the importance of, one of the things that happened was I had 3 children. I'm basically the primary caregiver at that time. So when the early intervention team showed up, I was living in like 1,000 square foot house. It's a really tiny little house. And I literally had 9 people show up at my door. And so these were 3 different coordinator people. There were a couple of interns. There were the therapists who were to do assessments on the children. And we're all sitting in this large kind of living room, kitchen combo area. It's the biggest space I have in my little 1,000 square foot house. And my husband and I are like filling out paperwork. People are assessing the kids in the same area. We're all going crazy. They're asking us questions as we're filling out the paperwork. It's just like chaos. Okay, so what happened was, and what I didn't catch because I didn't understand, was that part of what we were filling out was the ADOS. Well, I didn't know what the ADOS was. It didn't mean anything to me. My daughter, who had, weird and quirky behaviors, my husband filled out the ADOS. He's not the primary caregiver of the children. So later on, I happened to run into another mother who's a special needs mom, who then tells me, I think with all these weird and quirky behaviors you're discussing, please turn off that TV. Sorry. All right. So all these weird and quirky behaviors that you're discussing, I think your daughter has autism. And I'm like, what? Autism? What's that? So after looking everything up, I'm like, she might have autism. So then I found out, well, one of the ways you do that is to do the ADOS. So when the early intervention coordinator, who was our regular coordinator, came to my house, I'm like, hey, why didn't you say something? Did you not notice that my daughter may have autism? You've been here working with her. Why didn't you say anything? And she goes, oh, it's not my place to say anything. Okay, well, I didn't realize that either, right? But I didn't understand either at that time, early intervention is that educational model. And all they care about is your child functional in the educational environment. They dropped her off at developmental preschool because she functioned. That's all they care about. So there was a lot that I did not understand at that moment. And I was very overwhelmed, had no idea what was going on. They wound up redoing the assessment. I filled it out this time. And when I did, she came back saying, yes, she may actually have autism. And then they sent her for testing. And I was able to get that done before she literally aged out. And even that kind of came back like we weren't quite sure. So it took me a little more testing and a little more running around before I got it done. But she was determined to have autism by the time she was like 3.5. So I was very thankful that this special needs mom who I bumped into happened to tell me that information, because had she not said something, I wouldn't have known. And who knows how long it would have taken me to figure it out. So I'm really thankful to the people who I've sort of have bumped into along the way, and the people who I have met through Facebook and other social media, because it is through those people I have learned the most from, right? And so now at this point, I'm all about paying it forward to tell others, to help them understand their child, help them understand the difference between medical and educational, help them understand the importance of getting your child tested, both medically and educationally, getting that information together, how to access services. I was talking to Capri earlier, one of the first things I ever did was actually medical advocacy. I used to help people with accessing services medically. And it sort of morphed more and more into special education as I started to learn more and more about special education. And that's why, as an advocate, I practice advocacy quite differently from anybody else I know, because I look at things from a very medical point of view. All right, so I'm sure that's more than y'all wanted to know. Anyways, so back to questions here. So Renee had asked, is there a guide to scaffold IEP goals? That's a good question. I know there are some guides to scaffolding. I'm not sure about specifically IEP goals, but I will say you're on a very good point, hot topic, because one of the things I often see is, especially for executive functioning goals, they'll talk about the child will learn to organize themselves, and they'll have a notebook, and they're supposed to have this notebook and then carry it from class to class and have it signed off on. It sounds good, but the problem is not once, not even once, did anyone stop first. Let's teach the child how to be organized. We have to start there, right? We got to teach them how to even get anything from class to class to class. Until we do that, until we help them build that habit, right? How can they do it consistently? They won't. They'll always lose it. And so I think it's really important to kind of build in a goal where we're going to teach them how to accomplish these bigger goals, right, that we're going to get to. Sort of like our big goal is to teach them to be, to take a notebook from class to class to be organized. Well, we need kind of like benchmark goals, smaller goals. How are we going to get there to make that happen? And that's kind of reminds me of what scaffolding would be. But I do think it's really important to kind of look into that and to think about that, especially for those executive functioning. It really kind of drives me nutty. And I even mentioned this in my blog post on ADHD and ADHD, and the educational setting. And that's because specifically in the educational setting, I really feel like they just kind of blow off ADHD as it's not that big of a deal. It is. It's a huge deal. And it just in general, I feel like people kind of blow it off. And I think that's a real shame because these children with ADHD really struggle and they're trying hard to do the things they know that they need to do, but they just can't quite manage to get there. And a lot of that has to do with the fact nobody's ever taught them how to do the things they need to do in order to get where they need to go, right? And so, like I've mentioned before, it's really important that you teach these children explicitly, right, the things they need to know. It's one thing to sit there and to take a neurotypical child and kind of show them a few times, like we need to take your notebook from place to place. Can't do that with the child with special needs. You often have to sit there and you have to go over and over and over again and help them build that habit. They can't build it on their own. They want to because they want to please you. I don't really know of many children who purposely want to get yelled at, who purposely want to get in trouble at home or at school, right? I mean, there's probably a few, but most children aren't like that. They don't want to be in trouble. So if they're struggling, it's because they don't know how. So you may have to back up a little bit and then really teach them that how and that habit, and then maybe help them put up visuals. Like, you heard me earlier, I have Alexa. So Alexa goes off. She just went off. So she goes off. She tells my children what to do. She gives them a verbal prompt. So my children have kind of phased out of needing visual prompts. You can do that with PECs if you need to. If you need help with that kind of thing, let me know. I can probably help you out. But we've kind of progressed past needing the visual stuff, but they still need verbal prompting. And so I use the assistive technology. Okay, so the Amazon Echo, but Google makes product, and there's other things, and there's little watches that vibrate and give a reminder. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out there that you can use that will help prompt your child to remind them to go do the things that they need to do. And then, like I said, if you need to, put up that visual schedule. For the longest time, I literally had a list of, hours of the day broken up in 30-minute segments. And I had it blocked off. Like, here's TV time. Here's time when you get up. Here's time you get dressed. This is time you eat breakfast. This is, free time to play. This is, and I whole day planned out. And that was for them so that they understood what we would be doing most days. Because as children with autism, they like they like having routine and consistency. And so that's what I was trying to provide them with that visual schedule. And then my son, James, by the time he was 5 years old, if we weren't on time, he would look at that schedule. What time is it? Oh, well, we're supposed to be doing this, and then I'd be like, oh, yeah, we are. So we would get back on the schedule. And then as he continued to get a little older, then it was like, okay, so I'm going to tell you, like, today we're not going to be on schedule. Instead of doing, whatever at 2:00, we're going to be doing this. We have to go to a doctor's appointment. So we have to be ready to leave at 2 o'clock, which means at 1:30, instead of doing whatever you're supposed to be doing at 1:30, you're going to be getting ready to go. So you need to make sure that you're dressed and that you get your shoes on. And so I'd have a little list of what it is that you need to do. And, everything was like a big list. And we had, I had all kinds of lists. Anyways, so like I said, they've now progressed and we're now to verbal prompting. But they still need verbal prompting. They're 11. So you can imagine that if you're in school and you've got all these multiple demands, you're going to need prompting. You're going to need verbal prompting, might need visual schedules, visual reminders. You need adults, right, to help you and prompt you until you build those habits. And so that's where I think that you need to work at. If you're going to scaffold an IEP goal, that's part of how I would look to do it. So Terry was just saying, buy the membership, and she takes advocacy to another level. So thank you, Terry. Terry and I have really been kind of hitting the state of Mississippi hard with her complaints. So it's been fun. So Courtney was just saying here, says if if you have, I can or will review the live feed. So she said, it just seems to be a hot topic in some of the groups that I belong. Oh, so she's talking about in the FERPA and the FOIA. And yes, it's this time of year, FERPA and FOIA seems to come up like a whole lot more. A lot of the topics, if you're doing this long enough, you'll notice are sort of seasonal and about the season in which they happen. And towards the end of the year, often FERPA and FOIA come up a whole lot more. And she was just saying any samples or information on writing would be very helpful. And just out of curiosity, I know that you can request records such as related service notes, evaluations, report cards, attendance cards, or attendance reports. But other than emails, are there other kind of teacher-to-teacher communication we as parents should consider to request that have right to access to? Actually, yes. So if just yesterday, I do believe I have posted in the group. So if you look, #FERPA, okay, you will see I just literally copied a couple of things right off the U.S. Department of Education's site where they have information on FERPA. And one of them is what constitutes educational records. And so you will want to read that, because I actually will answer that question in its entirety by reading that answer. I would tell you offhand, but I don't remember all the little detail. You would do much better just to go read what I had posted, but it's in the group. So Julie was just saying, I just signed up for bronze. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Let's see. Oh, so Terry was just saying, guess who we talked to yesterday? She goes, tell them, Michelle. So Terry's talking about, Terry actually had OSEP contact her. And I was like, I have never seen that happen, ever. So it was very kind. Terry let me participate in the call also. And we got to talk to who is the representative of OSEP over the state of Mississippi. And we were able to discuss with him kind of the importance of the actions that Terry is trying to bring, either to due process, a state complaint, or to the Office of Civil Rights. And so we are actually working on a two-prong action, essentially, out of what all has happened. One is to the Office of Civil Rights to discuss racism and bullying. And then the other is more of an idea action that will be addressed through a state complaint to the state of Mississippi to discuss basically where the state of Mississippi failed to identify her child as a child with a disability through the child find process, along with some other violations of FAPE. And so I've been helping Terry with that. and then helping her with the law to essentially go along with not only the Office of Civil Rights complaint, but also the state complaint. And then we are also, like I said earlier, she has an IEP meeting coming up. So she wrote an amazing parental concerns letter that just sort of bulleted and outlined everything. And so I went into that and then added law into it, both helping to emphasize the importance of the parental concerns, because often that is brushed off. And schools don't like to take that information into consideration, and they should. And it's in the law that they are to listen to the parents' concerns. So be aware, yes, you have complete right to write something up about your parental concerns. And this is why normally I ask you guys, right? Make sure, please write an email. I know because I know when I, even as an educational advocate, I know my stuff. And I purposely, because like the school tried to take all three of my kids and have like an hour for one, an hour for the next, an hour for the next. And for like in 3 hours to go through all three of my kids' IEPs. And I flat out refused and told them there's no way I'm having that happen, that you need to spread them out one per week. I'm not doing more than one per week, but I fully intend to participate in these IEP meetings. But I need time to prepare because my children are unique individuals, and I will not discuss more than one child at a time. It just won't happen. And so they broke up the meetings. And part of it is like, even me, my head is about to explode when I'm done with these meetings, somewhere between frustration and, me just needing to defend everything that's going on. Good night, James.
Night. Good night, everybody.
So, anyways, I know it's my son, James. So anyways, though, it's really important, especially when your children are different. Don't ever mix in your IEPs. Don't ever think that you're being forced to have to, consolidate stuff. Yes, actually, schools are under kind of this legal mandate to consolidate things, right? And consolidate meetings. But when they're talking about that in the law, they're talking about per child, not like all of your children. That's different. And as each child is unique, it's very difficult as a parent to come in prepared to talk about more than one child at a time. It's just really hard. So don't ever let the school do that to you. And then you need time to kind of not only prep for the meeting, have the meeting, think about what was said, right? Go home that evening, write a response, because essentially what you're doing is you're writing a prior written notice to the school. And in it, you're recapping what happened at the meeting so that it's documented what was said or what you got out of the meeting, along with whatever your parental concerns are still after you're done with the meeting. So please take time to write those. I know it's really difficult to do because your head feels like it's about to explode that evening. But I promise you it's well worth your time. And again, it's well worth your time to try to take really good notes during the meeting. So if you can't record the meeting, right, and try to take the notes as best you can yourself. But what's even better is drag whoever you can, a neighbor, a friend, a whoever, who takes good notes, and then let them take notes so that you can concentrate on the meeting. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to go on here. So Christina was saying here, my daughter was in ISS for 10 days and is not failing because, is not failing because she wasn't taught. I think she means she is failing because she wasn't taught anything. She said, is that what 300.15 is referring to, that they aren't supposed to? And she is saying, make provisions for supplemental services such as resource room or instruction. So, okay, you have like a couple of different things going on there. So if she's in an in-school suspension, they really should have been supplying her with her schoolwork. So did they give her schoolwork? And then, nobody was there to help her with her schoolwork, or did she not get her schoolwork at all during the in-school suspension? Because if so, that sort of, it kind of goes against the whole purpose, right? Of like the in-school suspension. The idea is to not let the child essentially feel like, we get to miss, what, kitty? She's biting my hand. Anyways, that we don't get to misbehave and now we get kicked out of school. So like we get rewarded essentially for misbehaving, right? So we do the in-school suspension instead so that you're still getting all of school. You just don't get all of school the way you normally get school. And so she was just saying spread out far and few in between, and there was no help for math. All right, so that's where the school did make a mistake. They should have been helping her. Just because that she's facing this in-school suspension doesn't mean that she's not supposed to be doing her work. So did they not allow her to turn it in late without penalty? Because normally you can turn it in late without penalty. And she was saying most days she had nothing to do and slept all day. Yeah, see, that's not what they're supposed to be doing with in-school suspension, because that's almost like staying at home on a suspension. She said she took her sleep meds one day. Well, that would put her to sleep. So, yeah, it would be hard to get her to pay attention on that particular day. So did they give her any, so they may not have helped her, right? But did they give her the work so that she could make up the work that she missed during the suspension? And so Christina was saying now she's failing 2 classes because she doesn't get it. So she doesn't understand what's going on. Well, yeah, if you're out of class for 10 days, it would be difficult to understand what's going on in class any longer. So I know it's getting really late in the school year, but you definitely want to call an IEP meeting to address this, that your child is now lost, essentially, because she spent 10 days, 2 weeks of school and missed 2 weeks worth of instruction. Well, let's see. No, she said she tried to do the assignments. So she has it now, but not then. So she got the assignments. And that she had A's and B's the day before. Yeah, so I think even more so to, then call an IEP meeting. Now, in the meantime, I would go ahead and I would write an email to the IEP team. So like whoever's the head of the IEP team, her teacher, along with like whoever her main teacher is, along with the principal, right? And let them know that as a consequence of this 10 days of in-school suspension, your child who had A's and B's in her class is now failing 2 of her classes. And that what are we going to do to remedy this? Because her disabilities has placed her at a disadvantage. And since she wasn't given appropriate instruction while she was in her in-school suspension, she is now failing. And so I would ask them, like, so what's your plan to remedy this? And just see what they say. And she has a 504, huh? Yeah, well, I would still tell them, though, like, and see what they have to say. I would try writing that email and just see what they reply back. Because, see, of course, like, not that this is the way it's supposed to be, but what you most often hear is, when does a child qualify for an IEP? When their grades are failing, right? So, yeah, if they keep that up, then you just push for an IEP. But no, they actually should address that. And if not, this may be something too that you want to bring up in a state complaint, because they should have been educating her She shouldn't have been sleeping. She should have been busy working on all of her schoolwork that she's supposed to do. And that includes her related services and other things that she needs. Like they should have been trying to address and accommodate her as much as possible in that in-school suspension. So, and then Christina's saying, okay. So yeah, I would try that first and just see what the school responds back and then kind of go from there. You might be lucky, right? And then they'll offer some reasonable solution. But if they don't, then we can work on kind of what are we going to craft to come back with as a response. So anyways, thank you so much for hanging out with me this evening. We've been on here for a little over an hour and a half, so it's usually about our cutoff time. But thank you for joining me and hanging out with me and writing me some questions, because I love being able to answer your responses. Also, do be aware that, and you can post things in the group. Usually I am on in the group later in the evening. Lately, I've been on here more during the day just because I'm trying to get a lot of stuff done for the conference. But I'm not always available in the IEP group on Facebook during the day. Instead, you can find me often on our website or in the forums, because I really am trying to also, besides the conference, like focus and concentrate and get some blog posts and some other stuff put together. Anyways, as I said, thank you so much. I hope you guys have a good evening, and I will see you in the IEP room. So good night. All right. Yeah, because she has definitely child find going on.